Time's up. Admiral.
Here it comes.
Chevron 1, coded.
For my ally is the Force, and the powerful ally it is. Life creates it, makes it grow.
You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Cry havoc, and let's set the tongues of war.
Chevron 2 is coded.
Conan, what is best in life? Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, to hear the lamentation of your women.
It's all in the reflexes.
Well, also said you're heavy into martial arts, Tai Chi and all that killer stuff. I suppose we have to register you as a lethal weapon.
Chevron 3 encoded.
And somebody ought to belt you in the mouth. But I won't. I won't. The hell I will.
Chevron 4 encoded.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Chevron 5 encoded.
You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Chevron 6 encoded.
That's the line you can, monkey boy.
Great Scott. Back off, man. I'm a scientist.
You shall not pass! I thought I'd die fighting side by side with an elf.
What about side by side with a friend?
A day may come when the courage of men fails, when we forsake our friends and break all bonds of fellowship. But it is not this day.
Chevron 7 is locked.
Howdy, y'all. Welcome to another Saturday Night Drive-In where we take a break from all the nonsense and try to enjoy ourselves with a good movie or two, or at least sometimes we hope it's going to be a good movie. Sometimes we don't agree on this stuff, but hey, opinions are okay. Jed, no one's going to hear you scream tonight. How you doing?
No one indeed. I am doing great. I'm very excited to be here. It's been kind of a just mediocre week, nothing going on. So it's always great to sit down and talk about a classic with you, Adam. I always look forward to this. So ready to jump in.
I'm happy to do it. Tonight we're talking Alien, the beginning of a franchise that fell apart. Let's be honest. 2 stellar movies and a lot of crap afterwards. And although it had, let's be honest, the Alien franchise does better in its peripheral IP media than it does in the mainline movies, I think. You know, books, games, comics do a lot better than the movies have done since Aliens. Is that a fair assessment right out of that?
I've only ever seen the first Alien movie today, and I started the second one today as well. But that is all that I have experienced within this franchise, so I can't say about the.
You're fresh-faced.
Very fresh-faced, and this is actually the first time I've dived directly into the sequel of something that we've.
I had to resist watching Aliens, and when I was done watching this yesterday, because I thought, man, I just want to get right to Aliens, because I'll say this right now. I'll get it out of the way. I like Aliens better than Alien.
Really?
Yes.
I'm only halfway through, but I feel like it's a major step down.
You see, all right, we're going to dive right in. And hail and howdy to the chat. We hope you guys enjoy the rest of the show. Remember to hit that like button, whether you're watching live now or on the replay. And we hope you like whatever we're going to get to. Now, this is not going to be an argumentative one. We can tell you this now. This is a good movie. It's an excellent movie. It is a classic. But we know my taste at this point. I'm not a horror guy. I'm not that type of build guy. And while this movie has a lot of high rankings in terms of both cast and directing and cinematography, I prefer let's go run and gun and kill some bugs in Aliens. because I love everything about the second one. We'll talk Aliens another time. We have to when we start these franchises. We eventually get to all of them, but Alien, as it's being said in the chat, it is that horror. It's more of a horror because here's the thing also, and it always has to be said when you talk about this franchise, these two movies. These are two separate genres. These two movies,
Absolutely.
Alien,
different directors, different decades.
Yeah, I mean, Alien. Yeah, there's only a 6-year difference. I mean,
well, they're technically 70s versus 80s.
Yeah, but it's not that far off, and it's the interesting thing. Like I said, Alien is a horror movie. It's a horror movie, and I mean, it's not a gore fest. It's more one of those.
I classify it more as a thriller.
Yeah, but generally people look at it as a horror movie. It is, but it's a different genre. Aliens, that's full on sci-fi action, where everything is over the top. We're expanding the lore. It's filled with Aliens has way more iconic moments than Alien.
I could agree with that. I already in the first half that I'm through, I've recognized famous lines that I've heard before, famous scenes before. It's definitely one that I'm more familiar with just as an outsider. I've come across them.
Let's see. I think I have it right here. Do I have it in here or did I take it out? Yep, there it is.
Game over, man. It's game over.
Oh, yeah. That I've heard for years.
Game over, man. Game over.
I just got past that scene. Just like that was one of the last things I saw.
I mean, Aliens also arguably has just as good a cast as Alien.
It's got a stellar cast.
The casting is outstanding for both these movies. And I watched the director's cut yesterday. That's what I watched, apparently. I apparently watched the director's cut.
I think I watched the regular version of Alien, but I'm working on the director's cut of Aliens. So switch back and forth.
But you're right. I mean, it's two different genres, two different directors who have completely different styles, both who are legends in their own right. Ridley Scott, James Cameron, both massive legends, both have a style, and both know how to bring it home. So let's get into it. Jed, set the table. Everybody knows. Set the table for Alien. What are we doing here?
So the basic plot of Alien seems to follow a deep space mining operation. The crew of this mining vessel are coming back to Earth after a contracted excursion by some unnamed company. I don't think they ever named the company. It's just the company. Yeah. And they're on their way back when their computer system wakes them up and says, hey, we've heard an alien signal, perhaps an alien signal, and you're by contract required to check it out. And they check it out. It turns out to be a xenomorph, and a horror-esque story unfolds within the confines of their mining vessel.
I'm going to say something controversial. Xenomorph did nothing wrong.
I mean, it's just reproducing. It's
not even like reproducing. It's they put it on there. It doesn't actually hunt them down. When you think about it, it only kills them when they go after it.
That would be true with the exception of the first couple kills.
Well,
like the Captain Tom Skerritt, he was going after it 100%. And then the two of them, the black guy and the other chick who, oh my God, that chick was insufferable in all the best ways.
Yeah. Harry Dean Stanton, the Brett, again, this cast is just filled with iconic sci-fi actors and character actors. Harry Dean Stanton, when he gets killed, he's technically in its territory where it had set up shop. So, I mean, and they were hunting it. They were technically
the creature doesn't come across as necessarily evil. There are aspects of intelligence, but at least in the first one, I got more the impression that it was an animal. And it was just, defending territory, focusing on reproducing. Like, it wasn't innately evil or anything. It was just doing its biological imperative.
You see, that's the thing. I was going to ask the question when I was going to talk about this today, whether or not I'm allowed to talk about the expansive xenomorph lore, but since you're just watching Aliens now, I can't do that because I don't want to spoil Aliens for you and other shit involved with the xenomorph and the shared universe it involves. So
with I have Predator.
With Predator and also that, and we don't talk about movies. You want to get good shared xenomorph Predator stuff, read the comics, read the novels. Those are good. The movie was
from what I've heard, the movies are terrible.
The first one was a bad adaptation of the first Alien versus Predator book, which I had read. So I thought I was getting that, but no, it's a bad adaptation of it. But the books and the comics are good stuff. That's real good stuff. That's quality lore, quality stuff. But this one, So I was saying no. That's what I said. So now I have to retailer how I'm going to approach our discussion today because I don't want to walk all over spoilers for you. So it's going to take me a minute to realign how I was going to approach this because I was going to talk about again Xenomorph doing nothing wrong, why it's behaving the way it is, but I can't talk about that expanded lore because you haven't seen it. So we're gonna I'm gonna change the angles a little bit there. So the Xenomorph, to basically understand, I don't think it did anything wrong because it's just doing what it's supposed to do, killing things that gets in its way. It's not what you're gonna see in it's not. They're not doing what you're gonna see them do in Aliens. I'll just say that they have a purpose for what they do in Aliens, and it's a very clean and basically instinct driven purpose and why they're doing it. So I'm not gonna spoil that. So the aliens are wrong, and this is one of those where the real villain is somebody else. Ian Holmes is Ash. That's the real villain in all of this.
He looked so young. I wouldn't have known it was him if it weren't for the credits. Like,
I know it was him.
Look like Bilbo. It did not look like Bilbo to me.
I didn't recognize for a minute there. I forgot. I've only seen this movie I think 3 times now in my life because it's not something I come back to. I didn't recognize John Hurt right away.
Yeah. John Hurt, he's very young as well. And Legatus, that's something that I was curious about in Aliens, because in Aliens, at the beginning, they didn't believe Ripley that the alien existed, that any of that had happened, and she was actually reprimanded for it to a certain extent. And then when the Marines get involved, the whoever the commanding officer was just casually like, looks like we've got a xenomorph on our hands. It's like, you didn't believe they existed, and now you have a name for them? Like, I felt like that wasn't consistent. I might have missed something.
For years, I missed the name Xenomorph, and I just referred to them what they called them in other things. We call them bugs. They start the humans, Marines call them bugs. So I've heard them for bugs.
They didn't believe that the Xenomorphs existed, and yet, just like you said, it's a bug hunting mission. They call them bugs right off the bat in the second movie. That's why I think the second movie isn't as good as the first one, mainly because the script, like the change to action, I think is cool, and a lot of the action sequences are great. I just don't think the script is as good from the half that I've seen so far.
And this isn't so much a spoiler for Aliens. I don't think I'm spoiling for this for you in terms of since you know it's a shared universe with Predators. The reason the Xenomorphs are everywhere is because of the Predators. They seeded the galaxy with them so they could have their ultimate
I was
prey.
aware of that.
Okay, so the bugs are everywhere because of the goddamn Predators. That's why they're all over the goddamn place. So Ian Holmes is Ash. Do you think there are hints that he is more than he appears to be throughout the movie? That he's an android?
I was aware that there is some third-party addition, just like you said, the expanded lore that he might be communicating with the Xenomorph, and so
I don't know about that.
I've heard that before, and I didn't see any evidence of it either, saying that it was the Xenomorph that corrupted him. I don't know, but like the evidence that he was an android necessarily, if I didn't know that androids existed in this universe, I did go into it knowing that I wouldn't have been able to predict that he wasn't human.
There's one moment right when he's about to go monitor for lack of a better term, the away mission to the ship where the eggs are. He does this weird thing where he stands there and just does like a running like that. And of course, I know I knew going in for this rewatch that of course he
was. And if I rewatched it, I might have picked that up.
That little moment is the key that there's something off with this dude. There's something off with him. And then as you watch throughout the movie, there's other moments where, he totally breaks personal space and he says certain things and does certain things. And before you find his answer, that there's something wrong with Ash.
His social skills are very poor.
Yeah. But Ian Holmes,
there were a few things with him that I probably missed. I have 2 major questions about the film, and I looked up both of them, and apparently this is a regular concern. It's not just like I missed something. Maybe I did, but maybe I didn't. One is with him, and then one's with the Xenomorph's decisions at the end of the movie. But with Ian Holmes, throughout the movie, they were saying, hey, this is just some random signal we came across, and it's protocol to check it out. And then he was talking about the alternate protocol, and they assumed that he was familiar with the alien. So he might know a way to kill it, did you do this on purpose? They sent him to because they wanted the alien for weapons testing. Like, they made a lot of assumptions and said a lot of things that were like, wait, was this not an accident? And the protocol, at some points, they're like, yes, that protocol he's got of retrieve alien specimens seems like a permanent thing. Like, whenever you find aliens, crew's expendable, get the alien. But at other times, they're like, no, this was very specific because the company knew that this alien crash ship existed. Like, it felt very inconsistent. Was Ash a plant to direct them to that alien ship, or was he just a normal crew member who they secretly had as an android to monitor the mining crew, and whose protocols of retrieve the specimen took over once the signal was discovered? Like, it's got to be one or the other, and I saw a lot of conflicting evidence for both. And the characters just kind of assumed that the company had sent him specifically for that. That was all a plan from the company to get the alien.
The way I look at it,
the
way I look at it is when after they've beaten the crap out of him, they're talking to his head with that really great 1979 practical effect of the head sticking up, covered in the android blood goo. When they're talking there, I get the understanding that the company knew xenomorphs are out there, and that he had a standing order if a signal came up and they discover it, that he's to collect it. Or maybe not the xenomorphs, but there's something out there that they've experienced. They haven't quite gotten a chance to get their hands on it. And that's why in that conversation, I feel as though it wasn't their order to go look for it, but the fact that they came across it, that it takes priority then. And it's a very specific priority, not just anything, but a very specific priority, which is why I think they included the whole, we find out in the language in the contract where anything you find, you get a substantial share in the profits. That's then to kind of gloss over the automatic pull by Ash to do it. Does that make any sense?
Okay, so yeah, Legatus is saying in the novel they cleared this up, but yeah, in the movie itself, it just like at one point, what's her bucket? Ripley completely is like, oh my god, he knows that this is happening, but at other times it's like this was an accident and his protocols took over. I think personally, the way that makes more sense is kind of what you're describing. Is he just happened to be a member of the crew, and then when they got firmer evidence about the xenomorphs, that priority, that protocol took over and became his top priority.
Remember,
that makes sense.
When Ripley's asking Dallas, how long have you worked with Ash? He says, Ash mission has just been introduced. We got rid of my usual science officer. This is the first time with him. I have no experience. It lends the feeling to me that he was put on there because with the chance that they would run across something in that sector of space. That's the feeling I get.
Okay.
That, I mean, headcanon, I don't know, and well, we'll try and respect.
I just don't know if they would
here.
Do if the company would have entrusted that into an inexperienced mining crew who didn't know about the priorities. Like, it feels like an incredibly dumb decision.
Here's why.
If it is intentional.
Here's why I think it's intentional. Crew expendable, thinking that the android's going to be able to deal with the whole thing by itself.
Maybe I feel like if they knew something was in that area, they would send people who were more equipped to handle it with the knowledge. It just feels like, oh, let's have them go through there and hope they get a signal and hope that they go down and investigate and hope that they get the xenomorph on board and hope the android can keep everything in check. It just feels like a really bad plan. And I think this movie works substantially better if it was all coincidence and that he just had that protocol in him to, hey, if you come across anything alien, we need it. We need it. That's your top priority, is we need it, whatever you find. And just have that as just like a routine sub-protocol that is just kind of, oh yeah, throw that in there. Yeah, I think that makes the movie make so much more sense and is a lot more...
And I know,
and increases the horror element of it.
And you're sensitive to coincidence versus forced plot thing. That is always something that you're on the lookout for to make sure something lines up. So I'm not surprised that that's a bone you're picking with this. And I didn't even see it because I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for this watch through. I honestly, this watch through, I was mainly watching cinematography. I was watching
and all that is incredible.
I was watching acting. I was watching decision making of the characters. That's what I was watching on this watch through.
Well, if we're talking about decision making of the characters, one of the
they're all
first things that,
retards, except for Ripley. They're all retards.
except for Ripley, and as we later find out with the revelation of who Ash is, the moment that we really get to see Ripley's character is when they're in the airlock trying to bring John Hurt's character back in, and she's like, "No, this is not procedure.
Yep.
We need to quarantine him." That's when she really kind of like steps out from the rest of the characters. Like, all right, this is our protagonist because she's doing the right thing here. We get a little bit of her character, and we see Ash's warped priorities. I love that scene because it sets up so much for plot, so much for character, and increases the value of the film. That's just a great little encounter. And Tom Skerritt, it sets him up to be the incompetent leader that he is.
Yeah, I mean, right up until that point, again, watching this, again, knowing what goes on, but trying to take myself out of it, you don't know who is the focal point of this story. These kids, they're just interacting. Hell, Sigourney Weaver's barely on screen up until that moment.
First bit. That's what I mean. Is that's when she really stepped out. And I obviously wasn't around in the 70s when this came out. Was she a prominent enough star that the audience could assume that she was the main character?
I don't think so. I mean, I can check her cinematography.
Like, I'm sure people knew who she was, but it's not like in a modern day thing where it's like, oh, the highest paid or the highest prominent actor is either the main character or the villain.
Probably the most famous actor on that cast at that time was probably either Tom Skerritt or Ian Holm. No, she hadn't done anything up to that point. She was just on a little bit of TV and a commercial.
That's awesome. That's great subverting of expectations.
That's her first. This is her first major motion picture. Everything else was TV.
I think that helps the movie a lot.
Commercials. Well, yeah, I mean, and she, and after that, boom, that's her career takes off after that.
Well, and Legatus is putting it a lot in the chat from the book and stuff like that. And Ash, knowing, like, having that protocol, I think it completely explains why I opened the door, which is in the movie. But I still not a fan of him knowing that the Xenomorphs was there and having this whole plan set up to get the Xenomorph.
Again, I'm not sure they knew the Xenomorph was there. I feel like it's just the programming is there and triggered if something arises. And
right, which is I love that. That's great, having just a subroutine and all androids are like, hey, if you're in deep space and come across something, crew's expendable, get us that evidence. That's great. I love that subroutine. But from what Legatus is saying, Ash knew that the alien was out there, that something like this was out there, and his whole mission aboard ship was to get it. And with the procedure, just the sub-protocol, it explains his decision to open the airlock. Like, I think that hurts the movie a lot. If that is what the exterior canon says, what the books say and whatnot, I think that's a very major detriment to the film. I think the film works so much better if this is just a major coincidence, which increases the whole, this could happen to anyone. This could happen to anyone. We were just very unlucky. We followed procedure and this is what happened. We shouldn't have been here. Like, I think that just helps them. Like, it's not some sort of grand plan. There's no overarching manipulation. It's just the universe is a scary place. And I think that is something way more valuable. So I don't know if I'll ever read the novel then, because that disappoints me a lot. If Ash knew the whole time and this was all some sort of company plan, I really don't like that idea at all.
Yeah, I mean, I never read the novel. I only read later expanded lore novels on the stuff once they started doing other shit. Like there was a future novel where the aliens took over Earth and called I think it was called Hive Earth or something like that. I remember. I just know it was out there. But I mean,
oh, and the beacon was human made. I hate that. Oh my god.
Yeah.
No.
Well, here's the problem. That's stuff that goes on if you go later on into the franchise, that where they completely destroy the lore with Prometheus and Covenant. That's, and I saw parts of Prometheus. I never watched Covenant, but I know that fucks with the lore even more. That's why I'm a believer there are only two Alien movies. There's Alien and Aliens. And then go read novels and comics. Go read novels and comics.
Yeah,
that's what I say.
But what I got out of the film, assuming was that they were unfamiliar with the signal. It definitely wasn't something that they were accustomed to. So I was assuming it wasn't human made. And the fact that it was a warning, kind of the impression I got is there were multiple alien races out there, and for some reason, another ancient alien species has put up this warning to say, "Stay the fuck away from this crash ship."
Yeah.
I thought that made a whole lot more sense,
And it
looked
was a
lot better.
warning because Ripley
Mm-hmm.
deciphers it.
Exactly.
Ash purposefully didn't decipher it right. And then
Right.
she got her hands on
if
it.
it's human made, that doesn't make sense. Why would it be a warning if it's human made to draw them
in the movie
to get it?
In the movie, it's not human made. In the movie,
That's
we don't know
great.
that. In the
I
movie,
love
we
that.
just know it's a warning, stay away, that the engineer crashes the ship. Now, of course, I ask what laid all the eggs, and that requires more lore. So we stop
yeah,
it there. It requires future lore.
I'm familiar with
Yeah.
what happens there with the queen. But since we're at this part, since we've talked about it a lot, is the design of the alien ship is something that I wanted to mention on.
Okay,
just
sure.
everything with the xenomorphs, especially their tech.
They have no tech. Xenomorphs have no tech.
Well, that spaceship that they were in.
That's an engineer spaceship. That the race called engineers. That's what they're
okay. Well, that spaceship that they're in the movie, they don't explain what it is.
Yeah.
Just that ship in context of the movie. I love how biological it feels because yes, the xenomorphs, they come across like animals in the first movie, just doing what they're programmed to do. So having this sort of visceral bone-like structure, it feels very much like a physical entity. And I love that design. It increases the horror value. I'm not a big fan of horror in general, but I think for this franchise, horror was the way to go.
It was a good start to it because it makes this first time dealing with a xenomorph, it makes it terrifying because again, the xenomorph's on screen for all of 10 minutes.
And it looks amazing.
And
the practical effects in this film are impeccable.
And in Aliens, that's all practical. Those are all people in costumes, dude, and it's outstanding. And they refined it a little more for the next movie because they had to mass produce it. But in this one, it's a fantastic element because you see it, the first time you see it, you get a really good look at it. But then when it does its kill shots with the secondary jaw, it's that close up and the jaw slowly opens and the ching ching as it kills like that. And it's not even necessarily killing them for food. It just kills them.
Well, it's doing something with them, whether or not it's food, because whenever they go to a place where they knew someone was killed, they didn't even find blood. So it's doing a whole, like, use every part of the buffalo for something.
I see. Here's the thing. I don't even, honestly, even all these years and all my knowledge, I don't know if the xenomorphs even eat. I don't know if they even eat because it doesn't look like they're designed to consume. They're just designed to kill and reproduce and survive. They're literally a parasite species because you have to use another host to reproduce, and they require other people to get them to other places. So I mean, they don't have technology. When a hive is formed, it's because a queen is spawned from whatever, and then the process begins with whatever the local life forms is. And Jay Fraser, 360 for £5. Post Aliens, either read the comic or listen to the audiobook of William Gibson's Alien 3. I also suggest Aliens Bug Hunt if you love the second film. Yeah, that's why I recommend the novels. I recommend comics because it's a better lore expansion to what they do with Alien 3 and beyond.
Yeah. I want to be very careful to focus mainly on sequels because, everything that you guys are telling me about, like the novelization of the first movie, I think damages it a lot.
What's great is that
sequel stuff sounds interesting.
Yeah. Again, the comics, and thank you, Jay Fraser, for the £5. The comics and the novelization, like there's several Aliens vs. Predators books, and then for a long time I had a trade paperback of Aliens vs. Predator War, which had a lot of short stories in there, culminating one. That's good stuff. It expands the lore nicely of both Aliens and Predator. It's engaging. You care about the characters. And the artwork's fantastic, too. It's really good artwork. But what we have here in this one, and again, there's the argument made that this movie could have just been standalone and perfect all on its own.
Absolutely.
It doesn't need a sequel. It doesn't need to go farther. Just having Ripley at the end asleep and just out there. It's having survived and kept her sanity, because in the climactic moment, and we'll get back to some other stuff, but we're talking about this now. In the climactic moment, when she spots the alien hibernating, it's fascinating that it's hibernating there, and she manages to get away from it, and she thinks quickly enough to put on the suit.
Right.
Sinking,
That's the
well,
other scene I have a problem with.
But yeah, here's why here's again, without I'd have to use extra lore to defend that, so I'm locked into what the movie gives us. But in that moment, though, Ripley as a character, you're my lucky star. You're my lucky star. Keeping her sanity intact in that moment is fantastic, and it's why this is stage 1, and then in Alien stage 2 of her being a classic, iconic female heroine. Well, female heroine, just redundant when I said that. Completely redundant. But being a heroine, being a strong female lead, I think is what I wanted to say. Why, as you said when we started this conversation to do this movie, she's the name you throw out there. One of the first names we all throw out there when we talk strong female hero. Ellen Ripley. She manages to maintain her sanity. She manages not to panic. She gets the job done, and she doesn't do it in a way that's unbelievable.
No, absolutely not.
Spacing the xenomorph like she did, having the wherewithal to strap herself in, having the wherewithal to have basically a projectile weapon that's not necessarily going to do damage because, again, payoff, she knows that if she wounds that thing, the acid blood's going to eat through the hull of the ship. So she just
needs something to push it.
Boom, and not necessarily damage it. And she knows that xenomorphs got tough skin. So it's
a perfect plan and execution. And I love how she uses the ship's burners to really cook it at the end. Like, it really gives you this impression that even though it's out in space, it's still live and dangerous. Like, just like he said, increases the intimidation factor of just this one monster leading into the sequels.
I mean, a xenomorph, there's no evidence that it can't survive in a vacuum.
No, none whatsoever.
Yeah, so
I assume eventually it would probably get killed, but highly resistant to a vacuum.
Because that's the thing. Xenomorphs, based on their biology, are designed to use a species to adapt to whatever environment they're born into.
That was something that they mentioned in this movie. Is I'm impressed it's doing so well in our atmosphere because it's used to very different atmospheric conditions. Yeah, like that was a great reference. Like it's adapting.
Its host was a human. Because the facehugger's host was a human. Therefore, that's the thing. It takes on the DNA of its host and uses that to adapt it. There's a, again, this is a what if comic. So again, doesn't count canonically. Where Superman encounters xenomorphs and he gets face hugged. And at the end, the final panel is he's been trying to figure out how I know what this thing is. I can feel it inside of me. I can't get it out without killing myself. So at the very end of it, what he does is he realizes if this thing bursts out, I'm dead. And it's going to create a xenomorph that nobody can kill. So his only choice is to keep it from chest bursting. And he contains it in his chest in a way only Superman could do, because you got to realize it hasn't been exposed to sunlight. So it's not powered up. So he can keep it in there. But but you got to understand, imagine a xenomorph with Kryptonian DNA as its base.
That would be unstoppable. Yeah,
it's unstoppable. So that you gotta understand, that's why these things are some of the scariest creatures ever created. And again, they can reproduce quickly. One queen could just churn them out. Not a problem.
Oh, and Legatus is bringing up one of my favorite scenes in the movie, some of the best dialogue. Ash, when he's the severed head and he says that line, I admire its purity. That is just such a powerful performance by Ian Holmes. Even as robotic, like he's being very robotic about it, but you can still get the sense of his awe in the face of this creature. It's beautiful.
The performances are great. Every character, every actor, distinct. Their issues, their breakdowns, they're losing it throughout the whole thing. It's so impactful. And even the callousness. I mean, Tom Skerritt's callousness as Dallas is just great. And it, like you said, it shows his incompetence of the whole thing. And it draws you in because you can relate to every single one of these characters. The greed how everybody's motivated by greed. You can understand how again, fear then motivates. When what's her name? The other chick. We got it here. Lambert. When it's down to just Ripley, Lambert, Parker, and I think and Ash, before they know that Ash is an android. Let's just take the shuttle and have our chances. No, the shuttle can't fit all of us. But the fear is, screw it. We're ready to leave some mind. But Parker's like, I am not drawing straws. We're gonna. But instead of running, he wants to kill it. Fight or flight. Fight or flight on display through different variations of it on everybody. It's great.
Oh, absolutely. The character work is some of the strongest aspects of this film. Like, even the characters like you're talking about, like Parker, I didn't really get much, like, I'm not familiar with the actor. I don't remember his name, but he still left an impact of, like, this is a person. I can predict how he's going to behave in the later scenes of the movie. Same with Lawson. Lawson was annoying as hell, but in the best way. Like, you knew how she was going to react. Her mental she wasn't that mentally strong from the very beginning.
No.
Just with some of the subtle things she did before the xenomorph was discovered or anything like that, you got the impression she's very much out of her depth just with the space exploration before the horror aspect.
Yeah.
And so, you know, she's going to spiral out faster than anybody else. And it's the character work, I think, it's definitely one of the strongest aspects. Everyone feels real.
And the character was great because, again, we said before, they're all retards. Every single one of them. They're all retards with their decision making. I mean, first of all, again, Dallas with his callous carelessness of not taking into account. I mean, the captain's job. The crew should come first. That's a good captain's job. Oh, your crew always comes first. Nope, I'm going to manipulate all of you with your greed so that we can investigate this thing. Secondly, also, the landing on the planet was such a disaster. And that's going to bring me to another topic I want to bring up after this. So they had the way they have to negotiate all the problems with that. So you got Dallas's carelessness and callousness retardation.
Well, while we're talking about Dallas, his over reliance on Mother was a very interesting thing. Like, in the moments where he had to make the worst decisions, he goes straight to Mother. And she's like, not enough data. Please just tell me something. Not enough data. Like, he wasn't adding any information to the computer. He was just spamming out and hope that Mother would figure
chances for
something out.
survival. I can't help you.
Oh, yeah. And just the performance of Tom Skerritt in that scene, especially where he's just typing. But you can see, like, even in his subtle way, he's starting to lose his mind. And if Mother can't help him, he's completely out of his depth. He has no idea what to do. It's so well done.
Somebody giving command when they shouldn't. His job up to this point is just to go from A to B, collect ore, deliver ore.
And they're asleep most of the time.
Yeah. We'll talk. I want to talk about the tech of this stuff later on. I do want to talk about the tech idea. But it's a fascinating. So Dallas, retarded. Parker likes to mess with people and is greedy as hell. Very selfish. And not a good, only a good team player with Brett, with his partner, engineer partner in crime. So doesn't really care about anybody else. Brett, he's just a follower. He just follows what Parker does, so he doesn't make a decision.
Just says yep to pretty much everything.
Now John Hurt's Kane, of course, his retardation starts the whole problem. I'm gonna go touch the alien egg thing, even though I see there's life inside it. I'm going to play with it and then stick my face over it.
Well, caution is, throughout the whole film, caution is one thing that he's never once displayed. Like, once they land, they're like, oh, we're still 2,000 meters away. And he's like, yeah, I can walk that. Let's go. It's like,
when they're saying, away team, hand up first. I'm in. I want to go. I'm ready to do this. When he goes down to the egg pit, it's just, he just does it. It's like, oh, it seems this mist field is reacting to this. Whatever, I'm gonna keep going through. I'm gonna stop. So again, retarded. We already mentioned Lambert. She's just not prepared for this shit. What else we got? And we know that Ash is compromised. So he's not retarded. He's just operating with a protocol that is detrimental to everybody. The only person who is smart, is Ripley.
Well, and they portray it in such a good way. Like, if this were a modern movie, she'd be making all the right decisions still, but she wouldn't be afraid. She wouldn't be worried.
She'd be whammon-splaining.
Yeah, whammon and cocky, but even in the moments where she's making smart decisions, you can tell she's terrified. Like, throughout the entire movie, Ripley is just as scared as everyone else, but she's able to control it. And that's, I think, more than anything else, what makes her the survivor at the end, the one who's making all the right decisions, is because, yes, she's terrified, but she's trying to let her more logical side keep in control. So that's the fact that makes her the smartest one. Not necessarily that she's like got the highest IQ or anything like that. She can control her abject terror better than anyone.
She never made a wrong decision in this. She didn't make any wrong. She made decisions by the book and out of what is the best chances for survival.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't just go, wah!
There's one decision she made at one point that I was hoping was strategy, and then how it came out later, I think it might have just been instinctual. Either way, it's funny. But when after she started the self-destruct sequence, when she's trying to make it to the shuttle, and then she sees the xenomorph down the hallway, she leaves the cat there. When I first saw that, I was like, oh, she knows the xenomorph's going to follow her, so leave the cat. Hopefully it'll eat the cat. And it was strategic, like, fuck you, cat, I'm going to get out of here. And then she comes back later, and she, like, all lovey-dovey with the cat, risking her life of, like, carrying it. So it might have just been like, oh my god, and dropped it. But.
I take it back. And, cat lovers are probably going to yell at me for this. That was the one decision, is going to look for Jonesy. In the middle of the meltdown, it's like, that was a bad decision.
And that was a very bad decision.
I think, that was a bad decision, because that left and then when she left Jonesy in the shuttle to go and try and shut off the self-destruct, that's really good cinematography, because there's the hint. When the xenomorph is over Jonesy's carry case, you don't know what happened to the xenomorph, but that's a good hint that the xenomorph is there. And then, of course, again, I've seen this, so I see it right away. When she's in there and she's getting ready for cryo sleep, I see the xenomorph's head right there. I see it before it starts to stretch. I see it right there.
Which is a question I have for the movie, and from what I looked up, it is another thing that's explained in the third party or later on material. Why was the xenomorph hibernating? A lot of people said it's intelligent. It knows the ship is about to blow up, so it's going to the only safe place. That's incongruent with the animalistic nature that we've described throughout this whole film and that you and I have discussed. I just don't see a reason. Another thing said that apparently xenomorphs have a short life cycle, and so it went someplace warm and quiet to die. That was an explanation I saw online. I just saw so many different answers, and I didn't really like any of the answers I saw online, so I want to know if I missed something, or is there a good explanation? It just not
here's the problem. The movie. Here's the problem of looking at this next to the lore. You have to take the lore out of this, because there's no lore knowing the lore, there's no lore accurate explanation for the xenomorph hiding on the shuttle going forward from this. Because using the lore, and again, I apologize, I know Legatus wants us to stay in the movie, but it's hard. We have to.
Well, he's bringing up a lot from outside the movie as well, so it's all good.
This is a drone. It's a warrior drone. It has no reproductive capabilities. Xenomorph can't simply just, unlike some other species where something can switch gender so that it can reproduce. It's a warrior drone. It's not even a male, because a queen doesn't need a male to reproduce. A queen can just make eggs. So
it's asexual reproduction.
Taking into lore, it's not as though this thing needs to survive to go someplace else to start a new cycle of xenomorph reproduction. So that says, taking it out of the lore, just in the isolation of movie, I think the way it works, obviously, because xenomorph has no eyes. It uses other glands to sense things and heat and all that kind of stuff, kind of like a predator, I guess. It senses thing. I believe it would sense the buildup of nuclear energy in the Nostromo. Building up, and therefore having tracked Ripley to the shuttle would see that was something that was going to depart, and then choose to hide in there to save itself, and then go to sleep mode.
Why sleep mode, though? Why didn't
because
they just like as soon as it was safe? If that were true, once it's safe, why didn't it attack her?
because of its parasitic nature, it can't operate the technology. It may be an intelligent life form, but it's not an intelligent life form that can operate the tech. Therefore,
Well, is it
hides
intelligent enough to know that it's not intelligent enough to do that, and intelligent enough to know let her fly me somewhere?
I think again, whatever the primitive instincts of the xenomorph at that in that moment would that would tell us, and that would be because if it obviously hid in an engineer ship, it would hide again and start the cycle all over again. Again, this is before the lore expands that you need a queen to start the cycle, all that kind of stuff. So that I'm trying to logically look at it through the lens of that of why it's hiding in that moment and not waiting to kill her as she steps in the shuttle, because at that point the lore hadn't evolved to where it needs a queen. Now it's just trying to get out of there so it can start the cycle again. However, it would do that. That's my rationalization of it. And that's the safe place because it watched them prepping to leave in the shuttle.
I can get enough of a justification for it to go into the shuttle, but the falling asleep, the just kind of moaning there and rustling around while Ripley does her whole thing, and it just feels like a sudden drastic change in behavior.
I just feel like that because it's in a dormant state in that moment, it wasn't aware of her presence.
Right. And after it being afraid for its life, leaving because it can sense a nuclear buildup, if that's what it was
not a nuclear buildup, but an energy buildup that
a dangerous buildup that it has to escape from. In a dangerous situation like that where it's fleeing, basically, why would it go dormant? Like that's a high octane situation. That's a high adrenaline situation. It's like I've got to escape. And it's very animalistic.
I'm going to stay with the rationalization, because then I have no evidence in this other than we haven't seen it operate technology in the movie. Therefore,
right. I think it's more an animal, so it can't fly.
Therefore, it knows it can't fly the shuttle. Or
it seems like a long jump and intelligent. Like it knows it's not smart enough to fly it, but it's not.
Here's how I put it. It senses that's the way out. Its instincts tell it that's the way out, and therefore tag along. In its instinct of a parasitic nature. That's why I said that's why I brought up the parasite. It's a parasitic nature. Therefore, its instincts are to go along to get along until the moment arises where it can then go on the offensive. And I'm just building on what the movie shows us, based upon that type of thinking. And that you're making fair points.
Yeah.
How does it?
I just don't see evidence for that myself.
Why doesn't it lash out at her? I mean, I was questioning too. It's like, wow, that she should be dead as soon as she got near it. She should be dead.
My biggest problem is it going into the dormant state. Everything else I can see enough of a justification for. I just don't see enough justification for a dormant state.
And see, then you need dormancy requires future lore to justify it. Pheromones, orders from a queen pheromones, stuff like that. Because a queen can order drones to back off just with pheromones, and then they'll go dormant. And they'll do whatever she says. So that's future lore. So we have to stay within the confines of the movie. But it's a rough moment there, and I see what you're saying, and I agree with you because I was questioning yesterday. Like, man, why isn't she dead?
I love how she killed the xenomorph, but I feel like with all the problems, it might have been better just to cut that whole sequence. Like her escaping, blowing it up was already a very climactic moment, felt fulfilling. Like I thought the movie was going to end. I was like, I'm happy with this movie. I love this movie. She's going to go to sleep and it's going to fade to black. And then she saw it. It's like, it is great how she did it. The intelligence, slowly putting on the suit, sitting down, strapping in and blowing it out the airlock. I think all these problems could have been solved if it had gone injured somehow. Like we saw the ship was falling apart beforehand, all the smoke spray, like the ship was doing some crazy shit. So maybe a bulkhead fell on it. Just something. If it were injured, the dormant state could be explained.
I think, but as a horror movie, they needed that moment where you have your protagonist face the monster,
which is great. You just need to justify it better within the own movie.
I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you. I've logically rationalized the whole scene for myself. So, but either way, if that's the only hiccup, then still, hey.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to say like this is a movie breaking moment. Not at all.
Yeah.
It is just something that I was confused by and haven't seen a justification online or in the movie or even our discussion to fully explain it. One thing that I thought was happening is we up until that point we hadn't seen the inner mouth leave the body to that degree. Like it went out a lot. So I kind of thought it was a next stage in its evolution.
No.
Just like it would, like earlier, it shed its skin, and the one dude found the skin.
Yeah.
Like that's something that I thought. In that
I
moment,
love
like,
it.
Ooh.
How they think they're hunting something tiny, but no. Within 24 hours, a xenomorph is full grown and is a killing machine.
I was using that scene to justify the dormant state. It's like, all right, it's reached far enough in its lifespan that it's about to shed this skin as well, the hard black exterior.
The
I feel
secondary
like that
jaw
would have worked, but
the xenomorph again, as its primary weapons are its secondary jaw because it gets in close and it's with such a puncturing action kills you. The sickle tail, you see it a couple of times, and I even think I kind of think it graped Lambert with it.
I was thinking the same thing. I'm gonna be honest. You just see it like crawling up the leg, and then she screams.
They did that. They totally did that.
Oh yeah.
But
I definitely picked up on that.
It has its claws. And its exoskeleton is hard, and then even if you damage a xenomorph, that acid blood. I mean, this thing is a pure weapon. Every aspect of it is a weapon, and that's why the company wants it. That's why they want it.
The company doesn't want it. No, I don't. I'm not accepting it.
But either way, so. We've kind of gone over the characters and fun and the whole pacing of the movie. Let's go to that real quick. The pacing, it takes about 30 minutes before we get to the horror ass of begins. A little slow in the beginning, especially because I
wasn't okay with that as first. At the beginning of the movie, it's like, this is way too slow. What is going to happen? And as soon as things started happening, it's like, oh, nope,
then
that
you're fine.
Had to happen.
Once events happen, because you're supposed to, it's a slow pacing with a purpose in the beginning.
Absolutely.
You're supposed to get used to this loosey-goosey crew. You're supposed to also
got great chemistry.
Yeah. Sorry. And you're supposed to get a look at the technology in a way, I think. And now this is 1970s trying to picture what the future's going to look like, not understanding, hey, screens are not going to remain tiny and square forever. We're not going to have mechanical keyboards forever.
Yeah.
And then their attempted futuristic stuff, but I appreciate the attempt at it. I don't hate it. I find it campy at this point.
Really?
With all the other experiences of and again, we're only 2 years removed from Star Wars here. We've seen what a man who can have a vision of a science fiction future can do with Star Wars. And yes, it had a little 70s vibe to it too, but it still looked futuristic.
I don't have a problem with the level of tech in this movie. I feel like those elements, the screens looking like that, that's the extent of what they
showing
had.
Binary code.
Yeah, like even Star Wars had like the targeting system for the Millennium Falcon at when they were shooting down the TIE fighters. Same type of deal. Like it's of the era, but like everything else that you're talking about, I think is good because it feels a lot more grungy, mechanical. It feels a lot more real and grounded, and like things take a long time. Things
and you get
hard
the idea.
To do.
It's all made of shit. It's all made of shit. Nothing works. And I asked the question to myself watching this: how is humanity getting out into space with such fragile technology? Because the slightest thing, and this shit breaks. Doesn't work.
I think it's perfect. I love the technology, with the exception of the screens being outdated. Nothing they could do. They did the best they could, but besides that. I think everything else makes sense.
They went to that grounded approach for space travel of, we don't do FTL. We're not good at that. We haven't discovered FTL. We're going to do sleep technology where we're going to put you to sleep in cryo.
I think this movie needed groundedness for the audience to put themselves in the position, in a good way, put themselves in the position of the characters. Because if this were a high science fiction future, whizzing about lasers and stuff like that, the xenomorph wouldn't have felt as intimidating. But if you keep it as closely grounded to the current era, you think man, this isn't that far off. This could be us. I could be that person right there
Yeah.
dealing with the xenomorph with this technology that feels comparable to my own. Like I just felt like it was what needed to happen.
Yeah, it worked.
Even if it was unintentional, I love every aspect of the technology in this film.
Yeah, it works for the setting because it also the archaic. It's an archaic future feeling. If that again makes any sense, I know those words shouldn't combine, but they do for this. The archaic feel of the grungy tech of the future. It leads to the horror aspect of a xenomorph running around in this giant ship and they can't find it, going using ducks, stuff like that. So it does make it work, and it appeals to the whole nature of it. Now, personally, I'm never a fan of cryosleep travel. That's something that never appeals to me in science fiction. I know it's a
Really?
useful thing. I never like it.
Why is that?
I guess it's my innate desire for I want events to move forward. And if you're in cryosleep, that means large periods of time are going to pass where you're just sleeping and the events are moving on around you. I mean, again, non spoiler because you haven't seen this part. Ripley's in stasis for 57 years between two movies.
Yep.
And she comes out the same as ever. I mean, she didn't age at all. So that it's my concept of time and movement and events and story plots moving along. That's my innate problem with cryosleep moving because then everything else moves on while you're asleep, and it just it bothers me. That's why I
can see it from a narrative progression standpoint. I think there are ways to do it well and ways to do it poorly, but I think it works in this film. Like Interstellar does it very well. Also,
I mean, that's why I feel like for my own science fiction type writing or integrating with fantasy, I'm going to use like an interstellar transit system where it's there's a natural network that allows you to go through a galaxy and then translate to another galaxy. It moves you faster than light. You're not necessarily moving faster, but it does. That's something I'm going to use in addition to FTL technology. But when you're dealing with a fantasy setting, like with fantasy worlds, and if you want to expand it beyond the first worlds, there's got to be one way to get them all together. This type of hub works, and I've got a whole thing worked out how it's going to happen. That's my way to get through that without having to use sleep time, cryo sleep transfers, and that works for me, and I think it'll work well. So, but that's
it just all depends on the setting and the type of universe you're trying to build. And for the Alien universe, the film itself is already a slow build, and events take as long as they need to build that suspense. And FTL would have given the film too much of a brisk pace, I think. And that's what the film didn't need. That would have been a detriment to the film. So it just depends on the genre, the classification of story, the what makes sense for the narrative pace. But yeah, cryosleep's never really bothered me, especially when you get into the whole whatever it's called, the time dilation from Einstein that Interstellar uses a lot and Ender's Game uses a lot. I think there are ways around having cryo takes so long, but I think cryo does make sense, at least for a virgin stellar travel species.
Well, at the same time, especially when you're dealing, even though Star Trek or it already existed, Star Wars existed, when you're to your point, trying to make it feel like something you can relate to, it's not that far in the future. We can't even comprehend what kind of energy it's going to take to go faster than light right now. We still can't comprehend that.
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah.
So cryo sleep feels like something that is legitimate.
Achievable.
Yet they still had artificial gravity on the ship. It wasn't the spinning gravity that they usually combine with that type of space travel with cryo sleep. So they still had discovered artificial gravity. So hey, it's not that nasty and grungy.
Do we know how far in the future this first one took place?
Ripley came out of cryo sleep in the 2200s, I think.
Okay, so like 150 years after this movie came out.
Yeah, I think it's in the 2100s. Legatus probably knows. He's going to tell us in a second.
He knows everything.
He was ready for this one. But yeah, so the movie achieves what it wants to do, though. Setting, cinematography. I was really watching it. Every shot is done with meaning. Ridley Scott. All right, 2112, 2122. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
2122. We pretend Covenant doesn't exist. That movie was Well, I didn't see Covenant. I know Prometheus was garbage, and Covenant was more garbage after that. All right, so but
yeah, Michael Fassbender's synth was way more advanced than Ash was.
Yeah, Ridley Scott knows how to get a shot, dude. Like watching the
100%.
camera move around them at moments when they're having two conversations, locking. Like one point when Ripley is talking to Ash about early on, it's all on Ash, and Ripley, you just hear her off to the side. It doesn't change camera, doesn't change points of view. Many times flipping back and forth through the communication in the ship. There's other scene when Ripley is it's either looking for Jonesy or returning with Jonesy. There's a kind of a lighting pulse effect on her, strobing effect on her that is really cool.
Yeah, the strobing, the lighting was impeccable.
Yeah.
Like there were so many little things that added to the horror. Like this wasn't a traditional horror film that I'm familiar with, at least. It used the lighting, just like you're talking about, the music. And in a lot of the best horror moments, it used the motion detectors beeping to add a stress factor. Like it just, the composition of the horror feeling was impeccable. And it was just so many little factors involved. And the cinematography absolutely contributing to it, showing you just enough of everything.
Looks good. You have the feel of being enclosed. You have the feel of
claustrophobia,
being trapped. The air, it feels like the air is being sucked away, even though it isn't. Everything looks, feels, smells, tastes right. And Ridley Scott knew every angle was perfect. I mean, there's not a bad shot in this movie. There really isn't.
None that stood out to me. And one thing with this movie and horror films of like the earlier decades, like the 70s, that I wish people would pick up on today is it's most commonly spoken about in reference to Jaws, but I think it applies to this one as well. And it's not necessarily an artistic choice, but the idea of showing the monster as little as possible.
Yep.
With Jaws, we barely see the shark. Again, that's because it was so expensive. In this film, we see it not very much. Again, probably because it was very expensive. Modern films just want you to see the monster the whole movie and just be like, look at it, isn't it so pretty? It's like, no, the absence of the monster is just as intimidating as the presence of the monster in a well-crafted story.
That's why Aliens, when they changed the genre, it's different because now it's not so much we want to scare the monster. We want you to feel the fear of the horde. Of the monster. That's a different type of fear where they're going to zerg your ass. But yeah, so it all really comes together nicely. And listen, they even had a master tunesmith with
I didn't know Jerry Goldsmith did the score until the opening credits.
Yeah, now listen, it's not his best work because it's very simplistic. It's really just a couple of tones here and there to set the mood. But it's still Jerry Goldsmith. It's still the man that created Star Trek music.
I think he's only number 2 to John Williams.
Yeah. He second only to John Williams. Literally everything about this movie was masterly crafted, I would say. And I can say that objectively because this movie is not the type of movie that I generally enjoy. But I know when I'm watching something that's done extremely well. So that being said, let's score it. Jed, it's your week, so you get to go first.
Well, just like you mentioned, I'm not normally into the horror genre, but it just works so well for me in a way that I wasn't expecting. I jumped right into the sequel. I've never done that before after a Saturday Night Drive-In movie. I want to watch Alien again tomorrow. Like, I want to rewatch it so I can pick up a little bit of that setup for Ash and whatnot. This film blew me away. I knew it was an all-time classic, but it really shocked me at how good I thought it was. My only 2 main points of criticism are a little bit of clarification was needed on Ash and his motivations. I think it was just very, very muddled, and the third party just chose the wrong solution, in my opinion. That was just destroyed the film, so I'm just going to headcanon this movie doesn't have any sequels, doesn't have any novelization, and it was just a subroutine that activated. And then again, the justification for the xenomorphs' decisions to hibernate at the end of the film. Those are like my only 2 main pieces of criticism.
Yeah.
Which is impressive for me.
Yeah, for you. Yeah.
and like And something that you said, I look at coincidences a lot, which is true. I think one of the only places where major coincidences are justifiable is as an inciting incident. And this film does have a coincidence as its inciting incident, the fact that it got that signal. But that is a coincidence that I think 100% works. It would have been somebody else, and we would have followed a different set of characters. So there's nothing wrong with that coincidence necessarily. Yeah. I have to give this film a 9 out of 10, and just because of those two things. I enjoyed it more than a 9, but I think those two things needed to be cleared up, and perhaps the director's cut does a better job.
No, not really.
No,
not really. I'm not sure. I've seen this handful of times, 2, 3, maybe 4 times in my life, because again, it isn't necessarily my movie, but objectively speaking, beautifully shot, well acted, looks good visually in terms of the aesthetics, the story, again, slow at times, but understandably slow, and it picks up watching as the xenomorph takes everybody out one at a time, this and that. It all makes sense for me as it flows along. And again, a strong female lead that at one point gets her ass kicked by Ash. We didn't talk about that, but he tosses her around like. And again, he's an android, so he's stronger than a regular man, but still, Ripley gets destroyed. She gets, and then impressive. The other one, everybody else comes in. They still couldn't pull him off her. They had to beat him with a fire extinguisher to get him off her. So, I mean,
and then electrocute him.
Strong female lead that we root for, and we're not just shut up, you stupid whammons. Again, one of the original templates for the strong female lead, a heroine.
She's just a great character.
Yeah.
Just implicitly.
And in Aliens, she evolves, which is even cooler. She evolves.
Which is one of the things I'm liking the most about Aliens. Just real fast. I want to do Aliens at some point in the future because I'm only halfway through, but so far I'm only giving that film like a 7 or a 7.5. Like I think it's a major step back, so I'd be interested to have a discussion.
Yeah,
about
which is
that
because I see again. To me, I rate it differently than this one because different genre. That's why. That's why we have to talk about them very carefully. But for me, I give this 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10 because all the positives. My subjectivity does leak in just because for this, the rewatchability of this is not high because at least you have to go a lot of years between watching it, at least for me, because you waiting for those moments, waiting. Okay, when's the first kill going to come again? How's it going to happen?
It's a slow burn.
Yeah. Watching this repetitively, it will lose what magic it has. It's not something Aliens. I could watch Aliens all the time. Because wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Get away from her, you bitch. I mean, it's all wonderful. Game over, man. Game over. And again, and just as good a cast. Different kind of cast, but just as good a cast. But again, it drops the points for the rewatchability. And at the same time, I am not the best judge of horror because I'm not a horror guy. So I can't say if it's a pristine horror movie. So I'm gonna edge. I'm gonna hedge my bets and say 8 out of 10. But again, this is a classic, and it gets everything right. There's really nothing wrong with this movie. That's the thing. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just we know we try to be objective, but some of the subjectivity has to lean into the score a little bit for me. As we always know, you're always the more objective score. I'm always the more slightly subjective score. But that's why we work when we do this.
It's a comparison.
That's why it works. So that's my subjectivity leans into there.
Well, the interesting comparison between Alien 1 and 2, I think partially because of James Cameron as well, but in the change in genres is Terminator 1 and 2. Because the first one was a horror film, the second one went more action-adventure.
But James Cameron directed both those movies, so that's just him saying, I feel like doing this.
But I think that's an interesting comparison. They made the same decision between sequels, but with that one, I'm actually the opposite. I love the action-adventure of the second one far more than the original.
That's the old argument there. Judgment Day is the better movie.
Oh, absolutely.
The more epic movie, too.
Absolutely.
You know, honestly,
which is weird.
We could skip Terminator 1. We could skip Terminator 1 and do Judgment Day.
I'm totally all right with that. There's one Terminator film.
Yeah, Linda Hamilton gets topless in the first one. Yeah, that's good stuff right there.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, let's not skip the first one.
But no, Terminator 2. That's one of those few instances where I'm okay skipping to the second movie in a franchise because there are only 2 Terminator movies. There's only 2. Only 2. Interesting how James Cameron is involved in many franchises where you want to say there's only 1 or 2 of these, even though they go on for way too long. Anyway, so there you go.
And there are no Avatar films.
No. I'm with you on that one.
You don't want to do Avatar 2 next week?
How about never? Even one?
I'm all right with that.
Because next week, it is essentially Halloween. We've been building this. It's not exactly the day before when I really wanted to do this, but it's close enough. Next week, The Crow. Oh, you want to? Oh, I got to be careful. You haven't seen this, have you?
I haven't. No.
Oh, you are in for a treat.
It's Rachel's favorite movie.
Then good.
Favorite.
Then good. That means Rachel's already on my side.
Oh,
Rachel's
100%.
on my side. That's good. All right. Yeah. So next week, The Crow, guys, join us. We'll be back. Maybe a little later start time. I'll talk about that in a minute. But we'll be back. And again, guys, if you enjoyed the show, hit that like button. If you're watching on the replay or the re-upload, again, leave a comment. Tell us what you thought about things. And we will see you next time. So until then, everybody, good night. Have a good night or day wherever you may be. And we will see you later. Until then, take it easy. And I'll click the button now.
Chevron 1, coded.
For my ally is the Force, and the powerful ally it is. Life creates it, makes it grow.
You failed your test. I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Cry hammer, and let's set the dogs of war.
Chevron 2 is coded.
Conan, what is best in life? Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, to hear the lamentation of your women.
It's all in the reflexes.
Well, I'll also say that you're heavy into martial arts, Tai Chi, and all that killer stuff. I suppose we have to register you as a lethal weapon.
Chevron 3 encoded.
And somebody ought to belt you in the mouth. But I won't. I won't. The hell I will.
Chevron 4 encoded.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Chevron 5 encoded.
You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Chevron 6 encoded.
Not while you can, little boy.
Back off, man. I'm a scientist.
You shall not pass! I thought I'd die fighting side by side with an owl.
What about side by side with a friend?
A day may come when the courage of men fails, when we forsake our friends and break all bonds of fellowship. But it is not this day.